So Anthony Edwards just declared for the NBA draft. He's coming out of Georgia. And because there's no NBA right now, why not go all in on the college prospects? The draft will happen at some point. Who knows when with the way the season's going to be pushed back. But let's talk about Edwards. So the most promising thing about him is his size. 6'5", 225-pound guard. Very athletic, 6'9" wingspan. I think he can play the 2, the 3, potentially even defend some 4s if he's up for it. And I think he could be very good on defense. I mean, there's a chance he could have some real two-way potential, being one of the better on-ball defenders and a really good offensive player as well. But of course, that size can help him on offense because he can attack the rim, and that is probably the most promising thing about Edwards' game right now. He's got a decent handle. It's not amazing, but it's good enough to where with some work he can be beating guys off the dribble consistently and maybe playing in the pick and roll some. And the dude can get to the rim. He shoots a lot of free throws. For his one season at Georgia, he attempted 5 free throws a game. He has had some games with a real lot of free throws. I mean, he's had like 3 different games of at least 10 free throws a game. There's a bunch with 8 or 9 attempts a game. So that to me is the way that he can be a really, really good NBA player, is just attacking the rim, and hopefully whatever team he ends up on gives him the space, and hopefully he's good enough to do that out of the jump. I mean, we can project everything, but if he shows up day one and he suddenly can't get by NBA defenders like that, then that could be frightening. But it seems like he will be able to be effective going to the rim as a downhill player sort of thing. But another thing about it is, when we're talking about attacking the basket, you got to be able to read defenses, and Edwards not there right now. He does need to make improvements in just seeing the open guy, predicting what the help is going to do, because I feel like what could happen if he doesn't work on this right away is he could get to the NBA and he could be one of those guys who just drives inside without a plan. Kind of like John Wall's first couple seasons. I think Westbrook dealt with that early on. And that just happens with some guys, I mean, we've seen Donovan Mitchell have to deal with that, and he's been better at it, to where you've got the talent to get inside, but you don't know the exact time to attack, and you don't know when the defense is going to rotate over, and you're not able to catch the open guy who is not always right to your side or in front of you. A lot of the time, it's the defense will rotate from a guy behind you or at the top of the key after you've already committed your drive, So he's got to improve on that, but it would also help if he could end up on a team that has a good coach for that sort of thing. I mean, because the lottery now is just so up in the air with the percentage adjustment, it's tough to project where he would end up. Like, before it'd usually be like, oh, he'll end up with one of the top 3 teams. Well, he could end up with like the 7th or 8th worst team record-wise because of the way the lottery is now. So it makes it a little tougher there. If we talk about the jump shot now, this was the thing that was talked about the most for him when I was learning about him earlier, which wasn't really learning, it was just hearing things occasionally, is that he's got to improve on the jump shot. He shot 29% from 3 on about 7 attempts a game in college. That's quite a lot for a dude who needs to work on his 3. The interesting thing, though, a couple things. Number one, he was more of a streaky shooter than a bad shooter. Well, he was still a bad shooter. 29% is not good. But there are games in there where he was very good from outside. 4 for 7 from outside his first game of the season. 7 for 16 against Michigan State. He followed that up with a 3 for 8 from outside game. 4 for 8 the game after that. There's a 5 for 10 against Tennessee. But then there's a whole bunch of like 0 for 6s, 0 for 7s, 2 for 8s. His last 3 games of the season, I think he shot like 3 for 25 from outside in those 3 games. So he's not horrible. He's below average. But I think it's mainly that he's just streaky, which ideally you would just want him to be consistent. So maybe there's little changes he can make it to his form and stuff. I mean, looking at his form, the things that I'm noticing, he has a lot of lift, which is probably fine. His form, it looks like someone who has practiced a jump shot or two. You know, it's not like he has to remember how to shoot every time he goes up with it. But one thing I am noticing is he kind of has to gather the ball in his hands in a very precise way in order to shoot it, which you're not going to have time to do, of course, in an NBA game very often. So I guess there maybe is still a slight mental block with him as a shooter, but I think there's enough there to be intrigued about how he can grow in that. I mean, a guy who's not confident in his shot doesn't take at least 10 threes a game in 3 straight games, which is what he did in like late January, early February, you know? Looking at his free throws, 77% from the line on 5 a game. That's good. And his free throw form seems pretty all right. Again, seems like a guy who's practiced a few of them, so that's nice. This is not going to be one of those, like, how the hell did this guy get to the NBA when he has no idea how to shoot sort of things. So I think he could be a solid shooter. I think there's enough evidence to suggest he can be a nice shooter. And that's probably all you need. I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to be a dude who's hitting threes off the dribble and stuff. I mean, maybe eventually. Because, you know, you give a guy 5 or 6 years of being able to practice that, and maybe he could. But if he can just simply be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter on open threes, maybe even just from the corner more often than not, and then have his abilities to get to the rim and draw a lot of contact and all that, and just make some solid improvements to his playmaking, then he could be a hell of a player. I guess we can't just assume he's going to do all that, because that doesn't always happen. But he's projected towards the top of the draft for a reason. Partially because this draft, by all accounts, is supposed to be not that great. So maybe in a normal draft, he'd be closer to number 10 or something, I don't know. If I can try to think of some player comparisons, I mean, if he becomes amazing at the whole attack and playmaking thing, then like Dwayne Wade. But a level below that would be maybe like Donovan Mitchell sort of guy, you know? I feel like he also shows comparisons to Victor Oladipo. Because when Oladipo was coming into the league, his thing was like he's an athlete and good finisher, works hard, but he has to improve as a shooter and as a playmaker and that type of stuff. And they have similar builds. And I think they both project... I'm pretty sure Oladipo projected to be a good defender, and I think Edwards does as well. So maybe that's the type of comparison, you know? Maybe he can have some Oladipo-esque jump at some point where his shooting finally takes off. Don't know, but that's what I got on Anthony Edwards. I think, why not? We'll look at the what the NBA lottery would be, and who knows if we're going to have a regular season, who knows if we're going to have a season at all. But looking at the teams in the lottery, I think the teams that would be most interesting for him, I mean, the Knicks will take any talent they can get, but pairing Edwards up with RJ, I mean, you do it if you think Edwards is the best player, but then you'd have to surround those two with nothing but shooting, you know? Like, even just having a rim roller out there could be rough at that point, unless one of them just is a much better shooter than that. And again, Edwards could be. I mean, he's had some big three-point shooting games. Cleveland will certainly take him. Atlanta would be interesting if he could be an off-ball guy for Trae Young. The Pistons will, again, take any talent they can get. Would Phoenix want another wing player? I don't know. If the Warriors got him, that would be something. I mean, you talk about having the right culture to grow through the stuff you're not great at. There you go. I would love for my Celtics to have a chance to get him, but currently the Grizzlies are in the playoffs, so that wouldn't happen. The Blazers, that would be interesting. Would the Pelicans want him? Because they've already got enough like shot creator dudes who mainly finish at the rim, even if Ingram and Lonzo have been better three-point shooters. I guess if I had to pick one team that I think I would be the most intrigued by with Edwards there, that's in the lottery currently, you know, let's put him on the Spurs. How about that? San Antonio, they need some more young dudes who they can be excited about. Sure, DeJounte and Edwards shooting could potentially be not great, but I don't know. That one just kind of intrigues me. Anthony Edwards on the Spurs.